Hello and welcome. Today we will be discussing the drums of death, the Koko toxic waste crime. In the late 1980s, a quiet fishing town in southern Nigeria became the dumping ground for Europe's toxic waste. The town was Koko, and what happened would change environmental law globally. Between June 1987 and April 1988, Italian companies Ecoma and Jellywask shipped 3,800 tons of hazardous waste to Koko in Nigeria's Delta State. A local resident, Mr. Sunday Nana, was paid about $50 a month to store hundreds of barrels in his backyard labeled building materials. But inside these materials were some of the most dangerous industrial chemicals known to science. For example, polychlorinated biphenyls, once used as coolant and flame retardants, now banned globally for causing liver damage, immune suppression, and cancer. Asbestos fiber linked to lung cancer and mesothelioma. The methyl formaldehyde and ethyl acetate formaldehyde, industrial solvent that damage the liver, kidneys, and nervous system and can form deadly toxins when burned. Finally, polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons and heavy metals like mercury, chromium, lead, and arsenic, all of which accumulate in soil, water, and the human body. These barrels weren't just waste. They were a slow-acting weapon against an unsuspecting community. Within months, the barrels corroded. Toxic liquid seeped into wells and creeks. Villagers began reporting nausea, chemical burns, headaches, and paralysis. Doctors saw a rise in premature births, deformities, and stunted growth, patterns never seen before. Mr. Sunday Nana, the man paid to store the waste, would later die of tuberculosis and throat cancer, believed by many to be linked to contaminated water. This wasn't an accident. It was a calculated deceit. Hazardous waste disguised as raw materials, shipped under false documentation, and offloaded with minimal oversight. Some scholars, including myself, have called this form of incident as environmental racism, the export of risk to poorer nations or communities because their lives were deemed expendable. The damage to Koko was very devastating. Farmland became infertile. Fish and shrimp stock collapsed. The air reeked of burning waste and oil sludge. Commercial transport avoided the area. Investment dried up. Koko became known as a toxic town. For the people of Koko, justice was never really served, because in 2017, another report resurfaced of another suspected dumping incident, reigniting fears that Koko's soil and groundwater were never fully decontaminated. Environmental experts and residents still report traces of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and other pollutants from the original 1988 disaster. Local clinics continue to note high rates of infertility, stillbirths, birth deformities, and cancers, health impacts consistent with chronic exposure to heavy metals and hydrocarbons. Many families still grieve losses due to illnesses no one had ever seen before 1988. Pollution just doesn't fade. It mutates, multiplies, and migrates. The outrage would reverberate globally. Italy was forced to take the waste back. The Koko scandal, alongside similar cases in Guinea and Benin Republic, triggered an international reckoning. By 1989, the Basel Convention was adopted to control the transboundary movement of hazardous waste, but many African nations said it didn't go far enough because it still allowed export into countries if they consented. So by 1991, the African continent created their own treaty, the Bamako Convention, which bans the import of hazardous waste into the African continent in its entirety. The irony, however, is that whilst Nigeria signed the Bamako Convention in 2008, it never ratified it, neither has it implemented its provisions domestically. The story of Koko reminds us that environmental crime from sea to shore thrives in silence. The people of Koko weren't just victims of pollution, they were victims of exploitation and neglect. So when we talk about oceans governance, maritime security, and the blue economy, justice should be at its core, holding those who profit from these activities, including pollution, to account. Who profits, who gets hurt, and what hidden barrels are still being shipped today in plain sight. Join me next time as we travel to Guinea, Benin Republic, and Côte d'Ivoire. 3 more chapters in the global toxic trade. Because if the ocean could speak, it would tell us that crime never really ended. It morphs to something different. Thank you so much for watching.